All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a closer look at something we all do every day, right? Daily routines.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, you might think yours is pretty basic, pretty run-of-the-mill. But get this. We've got articles, YouTube videos. We even dug up some forum posts where people are, like, sharing their routines.
Oh, wow.
And it is amazing, just amazing how much variety is out there.
Really?
Yeah. We're talking everything from these, like, epic breakfasts
Right.
to, like, those late-night study sessions. Like, it's all here.
Yeah.
It's all in the material.
You know, it's funny. We often just sort of go through our routines, like on autopilot.
Yeah.
But they really do reveal a lot about us.
Oh, interesting.
Like, yeah, our priorities, our values, even a little bit about, like, the society we live in.
Okay, let's dive into that then.
Oh.
So the Lingo Best English Academy website, they outline some pretty typical evening routines.
Okay.
Things like grocery shopping, brushing your teeth,
Yeah.
and of course, who doesn't love a little bit of Netflix before bed?
Right. Those are pretty relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, looking at one of their examples, Brandon from San Francisco,
Yeah.
we see how even just like a typical routine can be pretty revealing. So he's this busy marketing director, husband, and father.
Okay.
And his routine, it kind of shows us how he's balancing like, work and family.
Yeah.
We even get like a little glimpse into his wife's love for pasta,
Oh.
which I think tells us a little something about, how they prioritize family dinners
Yeah.
amidst their busy lives.
I love that. Like, we're getting insights into family dynamics through, like, pasta preferences.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is where things get really cool.
Okay.
So the article also introduces some modern English words that you can actually use to, describe your day.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I think, the words we choose, they can actually change how we feel about our experiences. Right. Imagine telling someone, you're swamped
Oh, yeah.
versus saying you're stupendously productive.
Oh, stupendously productive.
It just paints a totally different picture, right?
It totally does. Words have that power. It's true.
Yeah.
Makes you think about how you're describing your own day, right?
Right.
Speaking of, powerful routines, one of our sources talked about how routines are, like, really great for time management, productivity,
Yeah.
and even self-improvement.
Absolutely. Routines are so much more than just like schedules.
Right.
They can help us stay organized, reduce stress,
Uh-huh.
and they can even become like a form of self-care.
Self-care.
And it's not just about efficiency either. The routines that we choose, they also reflect our individual passions and interests.
Yeah, that's true. We found some examples of people incorporating things like playing the piano, gardening,
Oh, nice.
even shoveling grain on a farm
Wow.
into their daily routines. It's amazing how diverse routines can be.
That's a great observation. And it makes me wonder, have you ever thought about how your routine reflects what's important to you? What activities actually make your day like feel complete?
That's such a good question. It makes you realize how much our routines really are, like a reflection of our own, unique personalities and values.
Yeah.
And speaking of different perspectives, we also saw some really interesting cultural variations
Yeah.
in the routines. Several sources mentioned things like meal times and lunch breaks being structured differently around the world.
Absolutely. Those cultural differences can be so fascinating.
Yeah.
Like the Spanish siesta.
Yeah.
And the British Sunday roast. Those are like classic examples.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that what we might consider like a normal routine
Yeah.
could be like completely different in
Right.
other cultures. Like,
Yeah.
imagine having a 2-hour lunch break in the middle of the day. That's not something you see everywhere.
It's mind-blowing. It's funny because I actually I recently had a bit of routine culture shock myself when I was traveling.
Oh, really?
It really does make you appreciate, like, the nuances of different cultures and how they approach their daily lives.
It really does. And it's a good reminder that there's really like no one-size-fits-all approach to routines. What works for one person or one culture might not work for another.
Sure.
The key is, finding what works best for you and your lifestyle.
So true. But even when you find that like perfect routine, life has a way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking about that forum post talking about changes in your routine. People were sharing all sorts of situations, from new jobs and family changes to just trying to like fit in a new workout.
You're right. Life is full of like unexpected twists and turns,
Yeah.
and being able to like adapt our routines, that's crucial for navigating those changes, whether it's dealing with like, an urgent meeting or trying to incorporate a new healthy habit. Flexibility is key.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I know for me, even small changes to my routine can feel like a bit unsettling at first.
Yeah.
It's like our routines become these like anchors in our lives. And when those anchors shift, it can be a little disorienting.
It makes sense that changes can feel like disruptive, even if they're positive changes. It's like our brains, they kind of thrive on a certain level of like predictability.
Right.
And when that predictability is thrown off, it can trigger, feelings of like stress or anxiety.
Makes sense.
But the good news is that, we can learn to adapt and even thrive amidst change.
I love that. It's so reassuring to remember that we have the power to adjust and create routines that support us, even as life throws those inevitable curveball.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? What are some tips for creating a routine that works for us even when things are constantly changing?
Well, I think one of the first steps is, is understanding your own like personal needs and preferences.
That's
like
right.
what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that bring you, joy and energy?
Yeah.
What are the things that drain you? Once you have like a good understanding of your own like rhythm, then you can start to build a routine that really supports your well-being.
That makes so much sense. It's like creating a custom designed framework for your day, one that takes into account, your unique needs and goals. And it's not just about what you do, but also like how you do it, right? Like finding ways to make those, those everyday tasks a little more enjoyable.
Exactly. And one way to do that is by paying attention to the language that we use to describe our routines. As we talked about earlier, words have power. If you're constantly telling yourself you're like, swamped or overwhelmed, it's going to impact your experience.
Totally.
But if you can like reframe those thoughts and focus on the positive, it can make a world of difference.
I love that idea. It's like giving your routine a mental makeover.
Yeah.
Instead of like dreading those mundane tasks, you can find ways to make them feel more purposeful and even enjoyable.
You got it. It's all about like shifting your perspective and finding ways to infuse your routine with a sense of like intention and joy.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I'm already looking at my own routine in a whole new light. But before we wrap up part one, I want to touch on one more thing. We've talked a lot about, individual routines, but what about the impact of routines on our relationships with others?
That's an excellent point. Our routines don't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
They intersect with the routines of our, our family members or colleagues and even our broader community.
Yeah.
And those intersections can create both like harmony and conflict.
That's so true. I'm thinking about how my morning routine can sometimes clash with my partner's, or how different work schedules can create challenges in coordinating like family time.
Right. Those are common examples, and it highlights the importance of communication and compromise when it comes to integrating routines within a shared space. It's about finding ways to honor both individual needs and the needs of the group.
That makes so much sense. It's like finding a rhythm that works for everyone involved, like a dance where everyone feels like seen and supported.
Exactly. And that brings us to like a key point. Routines are not about, rigidity or control.
Right.
They're about, creating a framework that supports our well-being and allows us to show up as our best selves, both individually and in our relationships with others.
Wow. That's such a beautiful way to think about it.
Yeah.
I think we've covered a lot of ground in part one. We've explored the personal, the practical, and even touched on the interpersonal aspects of routines. But there's still so much more to unpack.
Absolutely. We've just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
In part two, we'll dive deeper into the emotional impact of routine changes. We'll explore cultural variations in more detail and uncover some practical tips for creating a routine that truly supports your well-being.
I can't wait. Join us next time as we continue our deep dive into the fascinating world of daily routines. Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we were talking about, how our routines can actually impact our relationships with others.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating layer to this whole routine conversation, isn't it?
It really is. We often think of routines as these personal things.
Yeah.
But they really do sort of ripple outwards into our families, our workplaces, even our communities.
Right. And those ripples, they can create both harmony and friction, right? We touched on the emotional impact of routine changes earlier.
Yeah.
Remember that forum post talking about changes in your routine?
Mm-hmm.
It really highlighted how those changes, even the positive ones, can be disruptive and kind of challenge our sense of comfort.
Absolutely. Think about it. Our routines, they provide us with this sense of stability, this predictability.
Right.
They become these anchors in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Helping us navigate the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then when those anchors shift, it's natural to feel a bit, unsettled.
It's like our brains, they crave that familiar rhythm.
Yeah.
And when it's disrupted, it can throw us off balance. I know I've definitely felt that anxiety when my routine gets thrown out of whack.
We all have. And that's why self-awareness is so crucial during times of change. Recognizing how those shifts impact us emotionally, that can really help us navigate those transitions more smoothly. It's not just about powering through the change, but acknowledging the emotional journey that comes with it.
That's such a good point. It's like giving ourselves permission to actually feel those feelings,
Exactly.
Whether it's, excitement or anxiety or even a bit of grief for the old routine.
Exactly. And remember, those emotions are valid. Change can be hard, even when it's for the better.
Yeah.
So be kind to yourself during those transitions, and don't be afraid to seek support if you need it.
Speaking of support, the forum post also mentioned some helpful phrases for navigating those routine shifts.
Oh, okay.
Things like I've started.
Uh-huh.
Or I now.
Yeah.
Simple phrases.
Yeah.
But they can make a big difference in communicating those changes to others.
Those phrases are great because they clearly signal a shift in your routine, which can be especially helpful when coordinating with family members, roommates, or colleagues.
It's like setting those clear expectations up front.
Yeah.
So everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
And speaking of different pages, let's circle back to those cultural differences we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The Spanish siesta and the British Sunday roast are great examples.
Right.
But there's so much more to explore.
Right. We just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how something as seemingly simple as a daily routine can be so deeply intertwined with cultural norms and values.
Totally.
For example, in some cultures, work hours and break times are structured much differently than what we might be used to.
I've heard about that. Like in some countries, long lunch breaks are the norm.
Right.
Where people actually go home and have a meal with their families.
Mm-hmm.
And then in others, it's more common to have shorter work days,
right?
But work later into the evening.
Exactly, and those variations they can have this ripple effect on everything from family dynamics to business etiquette. Imagine how a 2-hour lunch break would change the flow of your workday.
It would be a whole different world, and it really highlights how our own cultural lens shapes our perceptions of what's normal when it comes to routines.
It's a powerful reminder that there's no one right way to structure a day.
Yeah,
what works for one culture might not work for another. And that's where cultural sensitivity and understanding becomes so important, especially as our world becomes increasingly interconnected.
It makes you think about those times when we might have unintentionally judged someone else's routine,
right?
Without understanding the cultural context behind it. We've all been there, right?
We have, and that's why it's so important to approach these conversations with curiosity and a willingness to learn from each other.
Yeah.
So true. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground emotional impacts, cultural variations, communication tips. But I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about something that came up in a few of our sources, the power of language.
Okay.
When it comes to our routines. Remember those modern English words we mentioned earlier?
Yes, those were great examples of how language can really shape our perception of our routines.
Yeah.
You know, think about it. Saying you're swamped
Oh, yeah.
versus stupendously productive.
Right.
It evokes completely different feelings, even if you're essentially describing the same amount of work.
It's like choosing a filter for your day, and the filter we choose can dramatically impact how we experience it.
That's a great analogy. It's like we have this amazing ability to reframe our routine simply by changing the language we use. It's empowering, isn't it?
It is. It makes me want to ditch busy
and just embrace stupendously productive from now on.
Uh-huh.
But beyond individual word choices, I'm curious what are some other ways that we can use language to create a more positive experience of our routines.
Well, one powerful technique is focusing on gratitude.
Oh, okay.
So instead of dreading your morning commute, try expressing gratitude for the opportunity to listen to a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Or enjoy a quiet moment before the day starts.
That's a great tip. It's about finding those little glimmers of positivity, even in the most mundane tasks.
Exactly. And another strategy is using affirmations.
Okay.
So instead of starting your day with I'm so tired,
Uh-huh.
try saying something like I'm grateful for a new day and I'm ready to make the most of it.
I love that. It's like setting a positive intention for the day. And even if you don't fully believe it at first, saying those words out loud can start to shift your mindset.
It's amazing how powerful our words can be. They can influence our thoughts, our emotions, even our behaviors.
So in a way, we're not just creating routines.
Right.
We're crafting narratives.
Yes.
About our days.
Okay.
And those narratives have the power to shape our entire experience.
You nailed it. And that brings us back to the idea that our routines aren't just about, efficiency or productivity.
Right.
They're also about creating a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
It's not just about checking things off a to-do list.
Right.
But about designing a day that reflects our values.
Yes.
And brings us joy.
Exactly. And that's what makes routines so fascinating, They're not just about what we do, but about who we are and who we aspire to be.
This conversation has been so insightful. I'm already thinking about my own routine in a whole new light.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up part 2, I wanted to touch on one more thing. We've talked about the emotional and cultural aspects of routines, but what about the physical impact?
That's an important aspect that often gets overlooked. Our routines can have a profound impact on our physical health and well-being. Think about it. Everything from our sleep schedule and exercise habits to our eating patterns and screen time, it's all influenced by our daily routines.
It's true. And when we create routines that support our physical health, it can have a ripple effect on our energy levels, our mood, even our cognitive function.
Absolutely. And conversely, when our routines are out of sync with our physical needs, it can lead to fatigue, stress, and even health problems.
It's all connected, isn't it? Our physical health, our emotional well-being, our cultural influences, they all come together to shape the tapestry of our daily lives.
They do. And that's the beauty of routines, They're not just about checking things off the list, but about creating a life that feels good on all levels, physically, emotionally, and mentally.
I love that. It's about finding that sweet spot where our routines support our overall well-being, allowing us to thrive. in all areas of our lives.
Exactly. And that's what we'll explore further in part 3.
Okay.
We'll dive into some practical tips for creating a routine that truly nourishes your body and mind, helping you feel energized, focused, and ready to take on the day.
I can't wait. Join us next time as we continue our deep dive into the fascinating world of daily routines. Welcome back to the deep dive. So in these last 2 parts, we've really gone deep into the world of daily routines, right? We've talked about everything from cultural influences and the emotional impacts of change to the power of language and how our routines intersect with our relationships. It's amazing how much there is to discover in something that we do every single day.
It really is. Routines they're often seen as mundane or even like restrictive, but when you really look closer, they're actually incredibly dynamic and revealing. They reflect our values, our priorities, our cultural backgrounds, and even our aspirations.
It's true. And I love how this deep dive has challenged the idea that there's like one right way to do routines. We've seen so much variety and so many different approaches. It's really about finding what works best for you and your unique circumstances.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. The key is to be intentional about designing a routine that supports your well-being and helps you live a more fulfilling life.
Speaking of well-being, in part 2, we left off talking about the physical impact of our routines.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in the productivity and the time management aspects, but we can't forget about the importance of taking care of our bodies.
Right. Our physical health is foundational to everything else. And the great thing is that, even small changes to our routines can have a big impact on our energy levels, our sleep quality, and our overall well-being.
So let's get practical. What are some tangible tips for creating a routine that supports our physical health?
Well, I think one of the most important things is prioritizing sleep.
Okay.
Getting enough sleep is crucial for our physical and mental health, yet so many of us are chronically sleep deprived.
Right.
So, think about creating a consistent sleep schedule, making sure your bedroom is dark and quiet, and avoiding, screens before bed.
Those are great tips. And I know for me, creating a relaxing bedtime routine has made a huge difference in my sleep quality. Like a warm bath, a cup of herbal tea.
Oh, nice.
And some calming music. It really helps me like unwind and prepare for a restful night's sleep.
That's a great example. And it highlights the importance of personalization.
Yeah.
What works for one person might not work for another. So it's about experimenting and finding what helps you, wind down and prepare for sleep.
And what about exercise? I know we all know we should be exercising regularly,
right.
but it can be tough to fit it into our busy schedules.
It's all about finding ways to make it a part of your routine, rather than seeing it as something separate.
Right.
Think about like incorporating movement
into
your daily life, like taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or walking or biking to work if possible. And if you can carve out like time for dedicated workouts, that's fantastic, but even just small bursts of activity throughout the day can make a difference.
I love that idea. It's about finding those little opportunities to move our bodies rather than feeling like we have to block out an hour for a gym section every day.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of consistency.
Well,
even if you can only manage like 10 or 15 minutes of exercise a day, doing it regularly will have a much bigger impact than sporadic workouts.
Consistency is key for sure. And speaking of consistency, what about our eating habits? I know our routines can have a big influence on what and when we eat.
Absolutely. When we're busy and stressed, it's easy to fall into the trap of grabbing whatever's quick and convenient.
Right.
Which often isn't the healthiest choice. So, think about like meal prepping,
Oh, you.
planning out your meals ahead of time, or even just like having healthy snacks on hand. So
Yeah.
you're not reaching for the junk food
Right.
when you're hungry.
Those are great tips. I know when I take the time to plan my meals, I tend to eat much healthier throughout the week.
And it's not just about, what we eat, but also when we eat, paying attention to our body's natural hunger cues and eating mindfully can make a big difference in our digestion and overall well-being.
One thing that's really resonated with me throughout this whole deep dive is this idea that our routines are more than just a set of tasks
Right.
or a schedule. They're a reflection of our values, our priorities, and our aspirations
Yeah.
for how we want to live our lives.
I couldn't agree more. When we approach our routines with intention and mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
they become a powerful tool
Yeah.
for creating a life that feels meaningful, fulfilling, and aligned with our deepest values.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of daily routines,
Uh-huh.
what's one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember?
I'd say the most important takeaway is that, your routine is yours to design. It's not about following someone else's rules or trying to be perfect. It's about creating a framework that supports your unique needs, your goals, and your aspirations. So, experiment, be flexible, and don't be afraid to make adjustments as you go along.
That's such a great reminder.
Yeah.
Your routine is your masterpiece, and you have the power to shape it in a way that brings you joy, energy, and a sense of purpose.
And remember, even small changes can make a big difference. Start with one thing you'd like to shift in your routine and just see how it impacts your day.
That's a great challenge to leave our listeners with. So, deep divers, we want to hear from you. What's one small change you're going to make to your routine this week?
Yeah.
Share your thoughts, your routine hacks, or even just your favorite no English word
Yeah.
on social media using hashtag the deep dive.
Yeah.
We can't wait to see what you come up with. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.